Okay, so we're going to have a look at something called creative painting, and it works really well for subjects where you have obvious light sources, so urban and low light photography. And it's also fantastic for this type of photography because, for example, take this image. It's a low light scene of a sugar factory, and let's say I want to really punch up the colours and make them quite vibrant. And traditionally we would do this through adjustment layers. So for example, I could try an HSL adjustment and increase the saturation, which leads to some not particularly wonderful results. We're kind of posterizing the colours a little, and the overall saturation just seems a bit garish, really. So I'll get rid of that. And instead we'll approach this more as a painter, so building up layers of colour and tone. So the first little tip I'll show you is a completely different approach to colour grading and colour correction. So rather than use our traditional adjustment layers, instead I'm going to go in and grab the rectangle tool. Then I'm going to click drag and draw a rectangle over the entire image. Then on the rectangles layer here, I'll set the blend mode to overlay. Okay, and then using the color sliders up here, we'll drag the red, green and blue sliders to a sort of a midway point. And then we can very subtly adjust these sliders to achieve the kind of tone that we're after. So if I just uncheck this rectangle, you'll see it's very subtle, but we've just added more of a bluish tint to the image. Okay, so that's our foundation. Now next, what we want to do is go in and create a new pixel layer. So we'll click Add Pixel Layer here. Then we're going to pick up the paintbrush tool from the Tools panel here and increase the brush size. And then, crucially, we'll take the hardness down all the way up here. Then we're also going to set this pixel layer's blend mode to overlay. And the first thing we're going to do is just add some areas of light to the image. So we're going to choose a near white color on the color slider up here. We're going to go for a slightly yellowish tint, like so. And then also we're going to reduce the opacity of this pixel layer to about 40%. Then we're just going to go over several areas just to bring the light out a little bit, like so. So this is just kind of getting an early idea of the areas that we want to accentuate in the image. So once that's done, we can start adding in some color. So again, we'll create a new pixel layer from here, set the blend mode to overlay. This time we'll take the opacity down to about 25%. And to get us in the ballpark for the colors that we're going to try and enhance here, we're going to use the color picker. So we'll click drag this over, say, this kind of tone, and then click it to assign it to our current color. Then we can tweak it a little bit just to make the colors a bit more dramatic. Okay, and then hovering our brush over the areas, we'll be able to see the real-time preview of what effect we'll have. So we'll go ahead and paint the color in to these areas, and we can really bring out the reflections on the water here. Okay, so we've started to enhance the oranges, so now we're going to go for the blues and the purples. So again, create a new pixel layer, set the blend mode to overlay, take the opacity down. We'll use a slightly higher opacity this time. And then as before, we can use the color picker from here to pick a bluish tone, and then we'll just tweak the sliders to make the tone a bit more dramatic. Then once again, paint over those areas. We've also got some smaller lights here that we can accentuate, like so. And then let's just lend the illuminated building at the background here a bit of a bluish tint. Okay, so hopefully you can see where we're going with this. If I shift click and select these 3 pixel layers and then uncheck them, we can see that already we've begun to add quite a lot of vibrance and colour to the image. We won't stop there though, so we'll add another pixel layer, and this time we're going to set the blend mode to glow and then reduce the opacity to about 20%. Okay, so this is a way of just adding a bit of spread and diffusion to the light. So as we already have the blue colour selected, we'll just go over the blue lights. And you want to use this in moderation because it doesn't blend as realistically as using overlay as a blend mode. But used in small doses, it just lends a bit more radiance to those areas of light. Okay, so we'll go in and choose a suitable orange colour and do the same to the orange lights. So it's just a really nice way of suggesting some diffusion of light around your light sources. Okay, so I think the next step that I want to take is actually reflect some of the light onto this building here. So once again, I'll create another pixel layer. I'll set the blend mode to overlay and use an opacity of about 30%. And looking at this, let's actually drop the opacity down to about 20%. But we can change that later anyway, that's the great thing about this. And I'll just use some single clicks to kind of suggest the light reflecting off this structure. I can also change the light to the blue tone and just paint these areas in here as well. Okay. Then, as we did at the very start, a great way of actually accentuating all these lights and adding some extra diffusion and glow to them is to create a new pixel layer, set the blend mode to overlay, and then we'll use a higher opacity of about 50%. And once again, we'll make a brush color of near white. Let's give it a bit of a slight magenta tint. And we can basically just go over our light sources, and you can see the effect is quite noticeable compared to the slightly more subtle adjustments we were making. And another great thing you can do is just increase your brush size and then hover over an area and just single click, and it just adds a nice big area of radiance to that area of the image. And of course, let's not forget about the reflections in the water. We really want to bring those out, make them quite powerful. Okay. And then for the finishing touch, we'll just go in and add some more color specific glow. So once again, a new pixel layer, overlay blend mode, opacity down to about 50. Then we'll go for more of a blue tone and just work over the areas like the reflections and the blue light sources, like so. Then, once again, go for an orange tone and do the same for the orange light sources. And if you find here that you've perhaps gone a bit overboard, like we can kind of see these are brush strokes down here, that's not a problem. Just switch over to the Erase Brush tool, take the hardness down, increase the brush size, and then just very subtly erase around those edges again. Okay, and something I just want to address before we sign this off is there's actually some nice purple tone going on in the water down here. So we'll just accentuate that as well. We'll get a purplish tone. And just highlight that in the water. You might find we have to use bigger brush strokes just to help the effect blend in a bit more. And then for good measure, we can just kind of go and add some purple diffusion here and there. Like so. I mean, the great thing about this is that although we can tell these lights were added on in post-production, taking a step back and looking at the image, obviously you can tell it's digital art, but it doesn't look out of place. And just for a reminder, if I shift select all these layers, including the color corrective rectangle here, and uncheck them all, you can see that the original image we started with is very, very drab in comparison. So we can use this technique of painting colours onto different pixel layers with different blend modes to really bring out vibrance in images that are otherwise lacking it. And you can try this technique out with any type of lighting, like typical landscape photography, but it does work really well for these low light artificial lighting scenes. Thank you for watching.